Aren't we lucky to witness something like that? Thank you so much. Let me add one more memorable moment to this beautiful morning. I have the pleasure to introduce our speaker. Dr. Delanio Adadevoh is the founder and president of the International Leadership Foundation. The foundation has the objective of developing leaders in the academy, in government, and in the private sector, who are known for their integrity and moral vision. One of Dr. Adadevoh's several books is entitled Leading Transformation in Africa. Dr. Adadevoh is from Ghana. However, while living in Zimbabwe, he helped establish the Africa Leadership and Management Academy, a postgraduate institution affiliated to the International Leadership University. He also serves as the international coordinator for the African Forum on Religion and Government. Here to speak to us this morning on moral vision and nation building is Dr. Delanio Adadevoh.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, permit me to begin my message this morning with my own personal appreciation to the organizers of the International Prayer Breakfast for 25 years of good service to the diplomatic community here in New York and to the nations around the world. Congratulations. I'd like to share a few thoughts on the subject of moral vision and nation building. We've all started the 21st century with great aspirations and expectations. Many of us are hoping that in this century, we will put behind us some of the plagues of the 20th century. We are hoping that AIDS, HIV, will not be part of our human story anymore. We are hoping that malaria will be taken care of. We are hoping that we can actually now have a solution to the problem of poverty. With these aspirations, we have many goals, many objectives, many plans for developing our nations and various spheres of our global community. However, when one takes a careful look at these plans, they are mostly addressing economic issues, technological advancement, and scientific breakthroughs. We are looking in a very simple way at the things that we want to have. What is missing is a vision for who we want to become. Because it is possible that we will develop and have all the things that we are aspiring to have. And when we will have arrived at this destination of development, we ourselves will not be there. Because we will have in the process dehumanized ourselves perhaps, or lost meaning and purpose and direction to our lives. So we want to take another look at the whole subject of development, and I am suggesting that we look at the place of moral vision in the development of our nations. The key to any nation's development is the character of its people. The economic indices that we look at, much as we celebrate them as very scientific and very reliable information on the state of health of the nation, we need to realize that they are only symptoms, or at best, results of the character of the people of the nations, the values the people have embraced, the visions they have embraced, and how they have chosen to work with one another. At the root of it all, we are looking at the values of people and also how people have chosen to organize themselves the priorities of the people, and their dedication to common goals and objectives. If we can borrow the words on democracy, we could almost say that meaningful development is that which is of the people, by the people, and for the people. No nation can rush to development with her citizens who are living with conflicting values. To be able to pursue development that is meaningful, we need to be sure that we have moral values that are commonly owned and our citizens are aligned to these. When we have conflicting values, we can almost be certain that we cannot have meaningful development. The question is, how do we get to values? Former President Vladimir Putin was asked the question, what role does faith play in your leadership? His answer touched on 3 points. First of all, he said, we must be governed by common sense. Secondly, he said, common sense must be based on moral principles. And then thirdly, moral principles cannot be separated from religious values. I know that many of us do not know His Excellency Putin as a religious leader or a philosopher on issues of life, but I do see that he provides us a path for looking at the subject that we are looking at today. That we need moral principles to govern our nations, and that moral principles in essence are derived from religious values. So thanks to him for that contribution. That was during an interview with Time magazine in 2007. But it is important to clarify a difference, an important difference between religion, religiosity, and spirituality. It is quite possible to have religion, to be very active in religion, and we have a lot of it. We are not lacking in religious activism. But it is possible to have religion and not have spirituality. What we need is spirituality that provides a compass for the principles that will guide our lives, our leadership, and our government. I believe that the life of Mahatma Gandhi illustrates the point that I want to make here. His commitment to his Hindu religion, his friendliness to the Christian religion, was translated into a spirituality that had these values. First of all, he believed that all humans are equal. Secondly, it was his view that no people have the right to appoint themselves rulers of others. He also believed that change, much as is necessary, can be achieved through non-violent means. He also committed himself to simplicity of lifestyle. We see in his life an example of someone who developed spirituality from his religious persuasions. How do we define spirituality? Spirituality is simply defined by virtues. Many of us will be familiar with these virtues: compassion, kindness, humility, forgiving attitudes, peacefulness, and patience, to just name a few. These virtues form the foundation for morality or moral values. Let's come to the subject of morality. When we look at the word, we go to the Latin meaning of the word moralis. It simply means pertaining to character. Pertaining to character. So we can define morality as the intentional disposition to behave consistently and systematically in a particular way. There is intentionality, and then there is also a pattern to life. When you have a people who have these kinds of commitment, you can be sure that you will have a nation that is moving in a particular useful direction. John Maxwell made an important point that morality is fixed. It is not situational. Morality does not change with every new situation. People who have moral values are strong, predictable people of good character. How then do we look at development with moral vision as the foundation? I suggest a framework for development in one word, the word holism, H-O-L-I-S-M. Before we look at what holism means, let's look at the reasons why we need a new approach to development. Lual Deng of Sudan made this important point. A society dethroned from its basic human values and institutions is like a bird stripped of its wing. It cannot move or fly to its destination. In other words, our development must be characterized by self-respect and human dignity. If we achieve development without the sense of self-respect, without human dignity, we will be like birds that have been stripped of its wings. The second reason why we need to look at a new approach to development is that we need development that does not exploit our fellow humans. This was the position of late President Julius Nyerere of Tanzania, that you cannot develop at the expense of the underdevelopment of another people. We are in development on the journey together. We seek to win together, not to outdo one another. Thirdly, we need a new approach to development that provides us the priority of the human element, so that when there is competition between the economic, technological, and the human, it will be very clear to us where the priority must be. What is holism then? It is development that touches on three areas. The first area is personal value and development. The second area is cohesive and developing communities. The third area is value-added stewardship of creation. Let's look at personal value and development, the first area. The importance here is placing value on each individual. Placing value on each individual. And then each person developing in a way that is all-encompassing. In other words, developing in the spiritual area of one's life, developing in the intellectual area, emotional area, and the physical areas of life. But this personal development is held in balance with involvement in community, where we are investing in our communities as our communities also are investing in us. And then as developing communities, we engage with the rest of creation, adding value to what already is. Under this approach, we can look at selected values that can characterize a moral vision for nation building. So I'd like to look at a few of these values with you this morning. I believe that the foundation for moral values that will guide the building of any community must be the value of God-centeredness. Without God, it will be difficult to have a standard by which we will determine right from wrong, good from bad, truth from falsity. We all agree that there is an eternal reality from which the world came to be. If we are looking at it as evolutionists, we are saying there has been that immaterial element that has translated into life as we know it now. If we are looking at it from a theistic point of view, as people who believe in God, that eternal reality is God himself. When we are looking at moral values for a people that are intelligent, for beings that have choices, I believe it becomes very difficult to approach this with a material perspective on how creation came to be. God, who is the highest intelligence, who is the most perfect being, is the source of creation. And his character, his attributes, then become the basis for which we determine the virtues that should characterize the lives of human beings. In other words, being human beings simply becomes being more God-like. In our age, in our postmodern age, we hold the relativistic approach to truth. And the claim is that there is nothing that is absolutely true. If it is true that nothing is absolutely true, then it is not absolutely true that nothing is absolutely true. We need absolutes to provide a standard for our moral values. If not, we will be heading very fast to a destination that we'll never be able to arrive at. Let's come to the personal value and development sphere. A nation is built one individual, one family, one community at a time. And there are values that must characterize the lives of the individuals in the nation. The first value under this is the sacredness of human life. Sacredness of human life. Every person is a gift of God to humanity. In God's creation, there is no mass production. Every person is custom made and for a purpose. And with such awareness, we approach one another with great respect, because each one of us is a miracle of God. Secondly, we need to look at positive self-identity as a value. A nation cannot develop when her citizens consider themselves second class to other people. For a nation to develop, we need to have the mindset that from God's perspective, we are all first-class citizens on the planet. Lee Kuan Yew, when he was helping build a first world Singapore from a third world Singapore, acknowledged that Singapore at the time was a third world nation. But he said that did not prevent them from thinking first world. That is where it begins from. So they began by thinking first world. If you think third world, you will remain third world. I remember I was traveling and I needed an upgrade, and I went to the desk and talked to the airline official. I presented my medallion card and explained to her that I was entitled to an upgrade and I wanted one. He took my boarding pass, gave it back to me, and said, "You have the upgrade." I said, "But I need a different seat number." He said, "No, I don't need to change your seat number." I said, "Why not?" And she said, "Everyone on this flight is in first class." What she really meant to say was that it was a small aircraft and there were no first class seats. But we need to give that perspective to our citizens, that no matter our religious backgrounds, No matter our races, our ethnic backgrounds, we are all first class, and we must all think first world. Thirdly, we need to look at the value of personal and public integrity. No nation can develop if corruption is a way of life for the rank and file of society. I remember being in a country and sitting down with a cabinet minister, and we were discussing plans for the development of the nation. She looked at me, and she could appreciate my zeal and, in some ways, my naivety as we were discussing the subject. And finally, she stopped me and said, "My dear brother, the problems in our country are very complex. The problem of corruption is systemic. It is a way of life, very, very difficult to uproot. And that is the challenge many nations face. If, on the other hand, integrity becomes a value that permeates society, nations will develop. It is the promise of God in His Word that righteousness exalts a nation. And I will say righteousness exalts a nation any day, anywhere." We come to the second sphere of the values, and that is cohesive and developing communities. First, we need to develop sense of community, where we are involved together and we want to build and grow together. It is the value that says, "I am because God is and we are. And since God is and we are, therefore I am." A nation cannot develop without a philosophy for social integration.